So hi everyone, it's Amanda, president of the Music Business Club here at Berkeley. We are so excited to have an amazing guest speaker this week. Thank you for tuning in during finals week of all weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys taking away from the books for a second to come on.
This week we have an incredible guest speaker, which I am so excited about. CAD Management is a consulting firm that sits at the center of artists, content creators, and brands. They offer services such as brand direction, tour management, marketing, graphic design, and advertising services. But the incredible thing is how they responded to COVID-19 and really kind of flipped and switched what they do to, account for just the crazy changes within business and the pandemic. So Clay, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to start on your point there, I'll kind of go backwards first to kind of go forward. So I started the company at a Roger Williams dorm room. I went to a small liberal arts school in Roger Williams. Not sure if anybody knows where Bristol, Rhode Island is, but it's like between Newport and Providence. Did not have a music business education, was in marketing, and just kind of signed my first band, local band out of Providence, and taught myself everything from tour routing to how to get a record on the DSPs and everything through YouTube and random books, rented from the library. And how many years has it been now? 6 years later. We've worked with everybody from Equity Residential, which is a Fortune 500 real estate company, building out their experiential and tour and artist relations programming. We've worked with Epic Records and RZ3 Recordings, which is Tricky Stewart's record label for any of you, big producers or songwriters out there. He's amazing. We've worked with brands like Jack Daniels, tech companies like Live Me, and just so many different clients. I mean, I've also had the Rhode Island School of Design as a client for many, many years. And we've touched a lot of different projects, whether it's on the tour consulting side, or we're, booking and routing and marketing tours and, building out experiences around tours, to us actually building out artist and fashion experiences between the fashion and runway world to the artist world. And now our big venture is in live streaming and gaming. And we've done a lot of great work with our client Hit Command, which is a subsidiary agency of Red Light Management, which I'm sure you guys all know who Red Light is. If you guys are into the management side of the business. And we actually helped launch their agency. We focused on the promotion and the marketing behind it, and really helping them, positioning them to be the thought leaders and the best experiential agency in the business. And we've partnered with them on many, many amazing projects so far. And a couple that we haven't announced yet, but follow us at CAD Management, and be releasing in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, we will make sure to link all of your socials, as well as any articles or things that we reference in the link below when we publish it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So kind of backtracking, a conversation that we were having earlier is about the process of growing a business, and so as you said before, when we were talking earlier, a ton of students at Berkeley, we think, oh, I want to graduate and work at Sony, or I want to graduate and do this or do that. And these, but there's such, a need now, especially since everything's online and, it's
to
grow your own company.
Yeah. So I think, let me just kind of, I guess, give everybody a sense of where the economy is, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm just reading some stats that my team and I were able to just kind of pull to kind of give a holistic view here. Latest job report numbers come out this Friday, and the estimate is about 30 million unemployed. Unemployment rate at about somewhere between 16 to 20%. with estimates from Goldman Sachs perhaps pushing 30%. GDP contraction is about 4%, minus 4% for the quarter. And global economic activity about down 7 to 10% overall. And obviously, we all know why this is happening, right? The coronavirus came. I don't think anybody really, anticipated that this is where we are right now because of this, right? And unfortunately, it has completely changed the business model of a lot of the fundamental things that the music business held true for so long, particularly on the touring side. So I think that's important to know, because the businesses that were made prior to pre-COVID assumptions have to make a drastic change right now in order to survive. And by that, I mean, let's take touring, for example, and I'm going to use my own company as an example. So a given year, we do about anywhere between 75 to about a little less than 200 shows a year, right? And these are from any size cap between, less than 200, maybe less than 5,000 cap across the board, right? And we actually had to go and cancel pretty much all of our shows, wow. Which is a huge chunk of CAD earning potential, right? So putting your CFO hat on, that's a really big hit for any company. And I'm saying this as, just kind of looking at the business. The traditional artists, about 60 to 70% of their revenue comes from touring. So strip that away, and now the economic question is, how are we as a business going to come and innovate and help the artists that are the lifeblood of this industry, and help them pretty much close the gap between what the gap of touring is pretty much leaving open, right? So any business that preceded that COVID era and that is, experiencing what we're all going through right now, every board, every CEO, and every employee are likely getting together, and they're asking themselves very similar questions here. They're asking themselves, what is going to change? Is the consumer sentiment going to change? And, how long are we going to be in this quote unquote recession, walking the line of an economic depression? So when I think about, a growth of a business, I think that this is an amazing time for any young student coming out of college to start a business, even though it seems really uncertain right now. Uncertainty has historically produced some of the best companies that we know and love. And let me give you an example, right? In 2008, when the banks crashed, 2008, 2009, the last great recession, when the financial system kind of came crumbling down, Uber was conceived during that time, right? Amazing companies during the dot-com boom, right? When the dot-com bubble burst, Google was conceived. So out of every crisis, there's always going to be people who innovate, right? And I think right now, students that are coming out of college don't necessarily need to go and look to work at the big companies, right? I think that you guys are so in touch with digital savviness and new ways of thinking, because you guys are experiencing things differently than maybe the past generation did. And you guys are coming up with new ideas, on the fly, and new ways to think about things that I think that students right now should really consider taking a hard look and say, hey, I want to take a bet on myself and build something myself. Because the industry is in such flux across the board that if anything, this is one of the best times to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we had a conversation before kind of you know, how live events have now turned into live streaming, and how you spoke on Billie Eilish is playing the same venue that other artists are now. And so it's really kind of this even playing field for people to create and innovate.
Yeah, and like we were talking about before, right? Live events are obvious. So let me actually back up. So what I've heard last, and you guys can Google this as well. The president of Live Nation, whose name is escaping me, went on CNBC Squawk Box and essentially said that Live Nation is prepared to not have shows for 12 to 18 months, which is a long time. So if that's the case and people are preparing for this, right, there's a huge amount of innovation happening right now and figuring out a couple things. One, how do we recreate the venue experience as best that we can through digital platforms, right? Two is once we create that environment, at what point are we going to try and monetize it? And what is that going to look like, right? So obviously, there are so many questions right now, and nobody has the answer. So your point taken of the independent artist that has maybe, you know, a couple 100,000 streams is probably as close to a major artist in terms of their ability to innovate in the same ways, because everybody's using the same platforms, right? Everybody's either using Instagram, you know, maybe Facebook, Twitch, Live by Live, whatever the platform it is. It's just that people are just doing it differently, right? And how are they kind of, you know, adding their own sauce to it a little bit, and what is going to stick. And it's not always going to be the big artists that are going to innovate, right? And obviously the big artists are innovating at an incredible speed, right? So let's take what happened with Travis Scott and Fortnite, for example, as probably a standard that is really going to open the floodgates to how powerful gaming is as a platform, right? I think the numbers were that he had about 12.3 million concurrent viewers. So that's the equivalent of having 12.3 million people in a stadium watching you perform, right? I don't know the exact details of if it was monetized or how it was monetized, but looking back on the data, there is so much money being spent inside the gaming ecosystem. So they're pretty much using like a freemium model to get people into the game, but then using like different levels and different things that you can do inside the game to monetize that through purchases of skins or purchases of different in-app products, right? That there opens up an amazing opportunity for different artists, I think at any level, to really explore, you know, how to connect with fans. And I'd like to say that for the independent artists that are looking to innovate here, really tap into your super fans, right? Because those are the people that are going to be with you and try and innovate next to you, and that are going to accept the fact that you're trying something new and maybe you don't know what the outcome is going to be. But yeah, I do think that is a very true statement, that touring is, you know, completely, you know, flipped on its head right now. And there's just a lot of opportunity to innovate like there never really has been before at any level for an artist.
So I think that that's a great segue to kind of go into the projects that CAD Management has been working on over the past month.
Yeah, so like I was telling you before, a lot of our clients right now are focused in on the gaming aspect and live streaming aspect of the business. So let me give you a couple of examples of what we're doing. First example is with Equity Residential. Like I was telling you before, they are a Fortune 500 real estate company with about 400 plus properties across the United States. And I think they house about 500,000, you know, residents. They're typically known for like higher end apartments or whatever. And for the last 2 or 3 years, we were doing obviously in-person events because that was just the way events were running, right? Now we're in a post-COVID space, and we're taking their event series called the Afterglow Concert Series, and we're actually turning it virtual, right? So the question really for them became, how do we create a cohesive experience for our residents, which we once did live in person, but now do it virtually, right? So we came in and we're helping solve that problem. On the, again, on the live and experience side, we worked with Hit Command, Red Light subsidiary, gaming and advertising company, to build out the Dance Music Gives Back Festival, where we were really more in charge of like the marketing and the promotion of it. But across the board, what we're seeing is that, there's amazing ways to really get to build, even your bedroom that we're looking at into a venue itself, right? And for people to translate that energy that you're trying to convey in your little bedroom or living room, wherever it is that you're streaming from, into something that the fan on the other side of the screen is really feeling. And in terms of the Dance Music Is Back Festival, we had partnered with the Recording Academy to raise money for their COVID-19 relief fund. And we raised a couple, I think about 15 grand, I'd like to say. I forget the exact number, but it was pretty high up there. And we're doing a series of them. So, I'll definitely make sure to let the Berkeley students know when we're doing our next one.
Perfect. Thank you.
But yeah, I think in addition to that, we're working a lot, like I said, also on the fashion side. I think there's a lot of designers right now that are, switching their brick and mortar first strategy into an e-commerce strategy. And as they focus 100% on e-commerce, there's a need to connect with influencers and music artists, and more fashion brands are enlisting our help to really build out their virtual experience online to drive traffic to their e-commerce store to increase sales, because they don't have this foot traffic that a brick and mortar store once offered. And then we do our regular consulting for artists right now, whether they're signed to a major label or they're independent, really helping them release, strategize their releases, build out their virtual tours, maybe, just look to really do out of the box things. So yeah, that's just a little, background on some of the work that we're doing right now.
Great. And do you think after COVID, the whole concept of virtual events is going to stay as prominent as it has grown to be?
Yeah, and I liken it a lot to, what I think happened to the airline industry after 9/11, right? People didn't necessarily just get back on planes. It took them a while to become comfortable just going back onto planes. And I believe that the same thing is going to happen here. I don't know necessarily how close we are to a vaccine, right? I think there's reports every day that go from, we're going to see it in 3 months to we're not going to see it for 4 years. So it's somewhere in between that spectrum, right? So I think, in terms of the live events, I think that consumer sentiment is changing across the board. And not to say that there isn't a want or a need to go out to the Madison Square Gardens of the world, or to, for what's the venue by you guys, 937 Club, or the Berkeley Music Club, or whatever.
939.
Yeah, 939. So I'm not saying that there's not going to be a want or a need at some point that people don't want to gather, right? Mm-hmm. It's just the fact that because of how impactful COVID has been across the world, I just think that it's going to take many years for the consumer to be comfortable again, to go into a 5,000 person venue, and, go back into Webster Hall where, you were side by side with somebody jumping around and having a great time and not really caring if they sneezed in the corner, right? So obviously, I think that bridges two worlds, right? So I think what we're going to see in the future is a hybrid of both. I think that venues are obviously going to have to lower their overall capacity because we're probably going to have to practice social distancing, I'd like to say, for the next year and a half, right? And as sad as that sounds, and as much as I don't want that to be the case, I think that's a reasonable estimate. I don't think it's like going to be like the end of this month and we're all going to go to the show again, right? So with that said, if venues that traditionally maybe held 500 or 1,000 people, or maybe 5,000 people, have to lower their capacity by 25, maybe even 40, 50%, and you're cutting that number in half, people have to realize that the concert business is a really small margin business, right? Like, for instance, take a look at Live Nation, right? Live Nation isn't necessarily making most of their money off of the shows, right? They do a ton of shows every year, thousands and thousands of shows, but they're really making the money off of their Trojan horse, which is their ticketing company, Ticketmaster, and the fees that they get for ticketing. So with that said, now bring that back to the independent promoter, right? All the many venues across the country that are independently owned, or maybe there's a couple that own a couple, whatever the case may be. If their margins aren't that high, they have to go back and think of an economical way to make up for that 50% drop in capacity. And with that said, that's where digital is going to come and take its step. Because if we can innovate digital now to be a really cool experience while everybody's home, there's going to be a point in time, and whether that's 2 months from now, 6 months from now, or a year from now, where people are going to go back to venues. It will happen. People will go back to live concerts. It's just going to look different, right? People may have to go into a live concert and get their temperature taken. And maybe you're not allowed into, TD Garden anymore unless you have a mask and, you have your temperature checked, and, maybe there's a couple other precautions that come out. Maybe they come out with a 5-second COVID test that you get swabbed before you come in. They look at it, and if you are negative, then they won't even let you in the venue, right? So who knows what the future like that could look like inside the venue. But what I think is really going to happen is, I think obviously the capacity is going to have to lower. And I think if we can innovate on the digital side and create these amazing concert experiences virtually, that we can supplement that loss of capacity with virtual. And we can start to really sell really cool packages the same way that you look at like a Floyd Mayweather fight, right? Mm-hmm. Floyd Mayweather, when he would go into box, whoever he would go box in Vegas, he'd sell, whatever the amount of tickets were. Let's say it was like 30,000 tickets, but the pay-per-views always quadrupled that, right? He was doing 400, 500, 600, almost a million pay-per-view buys, right? I guess the real question is, what does pay-per-view buy look like in live music, right? And like, what would you have to get as a consumer to be like, absolutely, let me spend $79 to, watch X artist live on, on camera or on video screen? And what does that look like? And what things does that come with? I mean, is it, you buy a package and you get some sort of like cool merch experience, or like, do you get to have a 5-minute FaceTime with the artist to kind of bring you one-to-one with them? Like, really, what does that look like? And I think that there's so much opportunity to innovate across the board, that question is hard to answer, but I'll liken it to say this. I think it's going to be a marriage of somewhere in between, and you're going to see a convergence of traditional live music with whatever innovations happening in digital now, and finding a happy medium between the two, so that financially speaking, you can still close the gap of the revenue that you're losing with the loss of capacity, if that makes sense.
100%. And especially for independent venues, there's actually the opportunity to gross more than they would if they were at full capacity, because there's no capacity to how many, I mean, granted, there's layers and packages, but there's no capacity to how many people can watch one live stream.
Yeah, and I think to your point, right, on the monetization side, I'm not sure in the near future people are going to be comfortable spending, maybe more than $10 on a live stream. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, it's I actually don't know of an artist that has actually charged. I mean, Erykah Badu charged, I think, like $1 for her live stream or something, but I think like half of it went to COVID-19 relief fund or something like that. I know that Bands in Town has been doing some pretty innovative work on like tip jar experiences. So they're like freemium kind of model issues where, you can see an artist and you can tip them, right? Whatever you feel the number is worth that you feel tipping them, right? Whether it's 50 cents or, $10, whatever. But with that said, I think from the financial side, it just really needs to be clear that the overall goal is to make sure that the industry financially, the business still works, right? Because even like we were talking about before, the margins are really slim, particularly for an artist. They have to pay out their manager, their road manager, their expenses, the taxes, the accountant, all these different things. They're pretty much like an operationally small business with all this overhead, right? The beauty of live streaming is it brings the overhead down, right? So instead of traditionally having to tour and maybe get, vans and cars and show insurance and all these things that come with touring, you don't have to have any of that, right? You could literally just have your like camera set up, your entire room set up as a venue, and all of a sudden you're good to go. But like I said, I think it just has to make sense financially, and if the business can figure out the finances of it and make it make sense monetarily, they're still the music, the live business is not going to stop growing. It's just I just think it's in a change of flux right now.
You mentioned, like live show insurance. And do you think that in the wake of this pandemic that there's going to be new clauses in?
Yes, I do. So let's take South by Southwest as an example, right? I read that when they canceled, they lost about $300 million plus. And in every business, and I'm not sure if Berkeley has like business law or something like that.
Yes.
But there is, you can buy as a business what they call business interruption insurance, right? Which is pretty much insurance on the effect of you pay a premium to insure your business on certain interruptions, whether it's a hurricane, a shooting, right? Like whatever the interruption is, right? You have to have insurance for that, particularly when you're doing the arena level, right? What I think is happening right now is I think every general counsel, so, the entire general counsel, the board, and the executives are getting together and they're figuring out what do the terms in their insurance cover and what don't they cover, and do they cover viral and bacterial interruptions, right? I'll give you a really good example. Wimbledon, who had to cancel their event, right? 10 years ago, bought an
pandemic insurance.
Huh?
Bought pandemic insurance.
Yes. So yes. Wait. Listen to this. So whoever was at Wimbledon, I think this guy or woman or whoever it was deserves a raise, because I think this is brilliant, and they have to write a case study on this in the future for any business class. They bought years ago an extra rider clause that they paid an extra premium for viral and bacterial interruptions. So by that, I mean they paid this huge premium for 10 years to be covered on this, right? And as the pandemic hit, the insurance that they bought 10 years ago covered all of their losses this year for not running the tournament. That is a massive amount of money. You have to realize over 10 years, let's say they spent $100 million on this insurance. They just reclaimed in insurance money about $500 million.
Wow.
So it's a long game, right? Like insurance doesn't sound good until you need it, right? You're like, why am I paying all of this, right? Like, and like I know a lot of artists that go on the road without insurance, so they kind of do all these things without the proper business safety belts necessarily in place. But I think to answer your point, what are the deals going to change? I think that every major festival and every major tour, I'm talking probably above the 5,000 cap number, is probably going to have a pandemic and a bacteria interruption clause that covers them for maybe 40 to 50% of net revenue that they may have lost.
Wow.
And I think that's what's happening. The issue is that I don't know how much of the music business had that covered, and whoever did have it covered, that's amazing for them. But I don't really know, how many, had that type of coverage. And the issue on the coverage doing it now is that if you're somebody who wants to build a festival or is planning maybe a tour in 2021 or 2022, to get that insurance now, your premium is going to be so much higher than it was 5 years ago. That's why the Wimbledon thing was so brilliant, was because they were paying such a cheap premium insurance because the insurance people thought, like, when is this pandemic ever going to happen? It's a lot like what happened in the 08, 09 bank crisis when people were betting against the housing market. People then thought that, Michael Burry and all those investors were crazy for betting against housing collapsing because that was an unforeseeable thing to ever happen. And then look at what happened to the housing market, right? So like I said, I just think it's going to change the precedent of, those clauses to really protect venues. But in addition, to get that line of coverage, you're going to see a completely different way of how venues are operating, right? So you're talking like we were talking about before. You go into a small 250 cap room, you're going to have lower capacity, but you're also going to have certain things in place. Maybe you're not necessarily allowed to be side by side with somebody, right? Maybe you're supposed to be wearing the mask at all times, the temperature check, the swab, whatever that new kind of like safety and seatbelt precaution is. That's what's going to happen, because it's going to be required to even probably get the premium insurance in general. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to be a widespread thing, and you're going to see it happen. It'll be really interesting to see, just what this new venue experience looks like, how is it going to feel, right? Like, are you going to be excited to go to a concert if you have to wear a mask and a shield on your head or something, right? Like how far are they going to go? Are they going to make you go? And look, I mean, I don't think it's going to be the same state by state either. And that's a whole other discussion, right? I mean, what was it? Georgia, or no, it was Mississippi, announced yesterday that people can go back into concerts without a mask. But like, do you think that Boston and New York is going to do the same thing? I mean, I don't think so. No. Right? Like, so that adds a whole nother layer to the complication of touring. Is if you now route a tour, part of your knowledge base is going to be, do I have to have a mask on me? Right? Yeah. Like, do the musicians that are playing in the band have to wear a mask on them? Right? Like, what are all the precautions, and who's going to map that out? What is the playbook? I think these are all questions that everybody's trying to answer. But again, going back to you guys, you guys are the consumers, right? And I think it's important that you guys think about these questions, because if you guys aren't willing to wear a mask in the venue and it just really deters you from not wanting to go in, then that's probably not something that the rest of the music economy should do if you guys really aren't feeling that, right? but how are you going to create that level of safety across the board, but still make the consumer feel like they're having a really fun time, you know?
Yeah, and I think a different case scenario, but kind of a similar discussion is Ariana Grande, in the wake of her Manchester bombing, required that all bags being brought into the stadium were clear.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so
And I've seen that like after that happened, I think MSG took the same precautions. Like you really couldn't come in, and the bag inspections. I mean, the bag inspections are always great there. I've gone to many shows and concerts there, and sporting events. But I agree. I think it's the same type of concept.
yeah, and so and then it was easy for her to say, you bought my ticket for X amount, you need a clear bag. Well, my merch here is you have a clear bag. This is Ariana Grande on it, and you pay an extra $40, and you need it to come into the concert. So I think that's artists are also going to have the opportunity to be like, buy my face mask merch.
Yeah, and you know what? I gotta give credit to my colleague Jesse Kirschbaum here. He's the CEO of New Agency. He had one of the smartest comments that I think people really need to listen to. He said that face masks are going to be the new sneakers. Think about it this way, right? Have you worn an N95 mask before?
I look like a chipmunk.
Right? They're not that comfortable and they're not that cool, right? So the next evolution of masks is going to come from the fashion industry, where they're going to be like, okay, how do we make a mask that's one, protective, two, functional, and three, stylish, right? Because people are going to care more about how cool your mask is in the next 3 years than how cool your kicks are. And I think that's a really important paradigm shift that every music marketer needs to understand, right? Because you're right. Like if I'm running a merch strategy right now, like I'm planning for 2021 and 2022 to have a stockpile of masks. But what are they going to look like? Are they going to be cool? Like, are you going to be like interested to have a bedazzled mask? Like, I think it's going to be a lot like sneaker culture, where people are going to start to collect masks. And you're going to walk into a venue or a bar, and the cooler the mask you have, the cooler you are, or something like that. Like I don't know. It's going to be so different. So I figured I would point that out because, again, that's just another example of our point going back to your other point before is, how is the music business going to change? That's a real fundamental change, so.
Yeah, no, Jesse makes a great point there. Yeah, it's literally half of your face.
Right? Yeah.
You can't even, like, when you're in a large arena, crowded, whatever, like even your sneakers, people can't really see them, but your face is, that's
yeah. And to be honest with you, like I said, I think a big piece of this puzzle across the board is advertising, right? And for anybody that's out there, and listening, I recently penned a essay called "Music: The Music Industry Post 2020 Depression. What's our recovery plan?" And you can Google it. It's on my LinkedIn. Just go to Clayton Durant. It's literally right there. And what I made the argument in that piece about was pretty much the fact that sports per year gets about almost $25 billion worth of advertising and brand sponsorship dollars. The music industry barely crosses $1 billion. So now I want you guys to consider this. The NBA, is that going to come back, right? If it I hope it does, because I'm a really big Knicks fan, right? And for anybody who likes the Celtics, they're great too. But think about it this way. You've got NBA, not sure what's happening. NFL said that they're going to go, but if there's a second wave of this thing, who knows, right? So there's a gap. There's an opportunity right now for the music business to gather together and to put all the best brains together and say, okay, how are we going to get some of the advertising dollars that traditionally went to sports and bring them our way? And I'm going to go back to the Travis Scott example. He brought 12.3 million unique viewers. That's more than an NBA basketball game. Like, so my question, and I guess the question that I feel like the industry needs to ask itself is, how are we going to get more of these ad dollars and bring them in our way? And what is going to entice these CMOs and, you know, the Ogilvies of the world to spend with us, right? And how are we going to show them return? What is that going to look like? And I think it has to start with the streaming services, right? So the average revenue per user on Spotify, their last quarterly report, was about $6, give or take, right, per user. That number has actually gone down for the last couple quarters, right? So I think where advertising can be a really big help is like, you know, we really need to understand what these brands want and how music can fit into the picture. Because if we can bring more of those dollars in our way, that covers the gap that touring has left us with, right? There's a lot of advertising dollars out there right now. You know, just because the economy is down and, you know, the markets are where they're at, doesn't mean that people aren't marketing. They're just marketing in different ways, because business and commerce is still happening. It's just happening differently. So I really think that it's the responsibility of you guys as the next generation of music business professionals to come up and really challenge that, right? And really start to think about, how can we bring these dollars in? You know, and what things do we maybe need to take from sports? What things can we do? Because music really is a cultural thing that moves, you know, society the same way that sports does. But music gets 1/25 of the sponsorship and ad dollars.
Yeah.
So I like I said, I think that there's just a really great opportunity for anybody in the business to really start challenging this and be inventive in the same way that they need to be about their live shows, and sit there and say, guys, there's a lot of advertising dollars still out there. You know, the NBA not happening, you know, it's possible it's not happening, and, you know, other sports as well may be impacted. So what can we do here, guys? And I think if they do that, they have a real shot at increasing the, you know, value of the music business, I think by almost 2 or 3-fold.
Yeah. And in your live stream with Jesse, you both spoke about how brands kind of have this responsibility to take care of artists during this time.
Yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know, I did write an essay with the Recording Academy, all on mental health, right? And I want to take a moment to just reflect back on where most artists are generally right now, right? If you're an artist with a label, you have a little more support. You know, maybe you have an advance, or, you know, maybe you have a couple other options to, you know, finance yourself and kind of wait through this uncertain period. If you're an independent artist and a majority of your money came from doing live gigs, this is a really hard time, right? And I say this because, having managed artists and having consulted for them, I know a lot of the money that they pay upfront for an album or a single or, you know, whatever artwork, right? It all comes from gig economy sources, right? Whether they're a waiter or an Uber driver or whatever, right? Like the gig economy was booming couple, you know, just this past year until, you know, where we are right now. And with that said, I think it's the responsibility of brands and artists and the music business in general to ensure that, you know, our artists their mental health is protected. I think that's so important. I can't even stress the amount of importance, because in that essay, I made the argument that artists and rising artists are one of their most important stakeholders. So if they don't invest in their mental health and ensure that they can survive this, the music business may suffer for a long time, because at the end of the day, great artists make this business go. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and I think everybody can agree with that at some level. So if, this isn't to say that there hasn't been an amazing job being done on this, right? I want to say a huge shout out to the Recording Academy, not because we did a little work with them, but their team is amazing, right? Spotify released an amazing, I think, was it $15-20 million fund. They started the tip jar for artists now. So when you're on Spotify, you can like tip them in the app or something through like Cash App. Bands in Town has been doing amazing work. Even the record labels, Sony dumped in about 500 million in COVID relief fund for creators and all these different things. So it's not to say that there hasn't been anything done. I'm just saying that in general, it's important that we always remember that, because if this thing continues past September, it is hard out there for artists right now. And it's not just the artists that are affected, right? It's the people that make their livings off of what the artist does. So I'm talking the studio musicians, the mixing engineers who can't go into the studio because there's 5 people in the room and everything's shut down, right? I read something the other day that 85% of musicians and gig economy musician people, or like people in the music business who are in that gig economy description, have not received any of their stimulus checks. Like, wow. or literally, like, think about that. Think about those people, the people who are running, the merch table or running the front of house or whatever. All those people who made a living off of giving us amazing shows. I read it in Rolling Stone. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, that is just so impactful no matter what way you cut it and read it. So I just think that's important to note. And yeah, like I said, it really is our responsibility to not just take care of, and provide resources for mental health in this time, but to also provide resources to make sure that, people can just like live, right? Because this is super uncertain. Like nobody has the crystal ball to say this is when the end date's going to be. And this isn't a man-made event either. It's not like the financial markets back in 08 where, it was a man-made issue and you kind of had a timeline of estimation of when this thing could be. We could see a huge dip in the summer and, there could be minimal COVID cases. And then all of a sudden, September and fall comes and there could be a new strain of it. And we could be back in this exact same position, having this exact same conversation.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that because I think it's just important to always keep that in mind that, if this thing continues to go along, it is our collective responsibility to ensure that we help. And help doesn't necessarily mean, go give money to whatever. I think it means, if you're a small business like ours, right, we're offering free consulting services to any independent artist that is affected by COVID-19. Just has to email us and say, hey, we have a single release. Can you help us strategize this? We have given away, I can't even tell you how many free consultations to actually build out their campaigns to make sure that they had the best opportunity possible to make the money off of recorded music. And I think if everybody stepped up and did that, we're going to get through this and people are going to be okay. But it just takes people, across the board just to continue to step up and, do their part.
That's incredible. The fear is with all of this COVID is that this, COVID situation is that content creators and musicians and these artists will no longer be creating because they'll have to resort to other jobs to make money because the gig economy is just pretty much, overturned right now. So I'll make sure to link the essay for the Recording Academy and all the other essays that we've spoken about tonight in the link below. A question from one of the students, he asks, what's the reason that music has such a lack of advertising dollars compared to industries like sports? Is it saturation in the market?
I think I think it really goes back to the business model of the streaming services, right? Spotify and a lot of these companies are in a unique position because they don't make they don't make most of their money on advertising. If you really look at their like quarterly statements, or Spotify's in particular, they make most of their money on subscriptions. So people paying the $9.99 fee, right? With that said, I just don't think that the advertising experiences are good, right? Like, name one person that loves to hear a commercial in the middle of you jamming out to a playlist, right? Like, and it's shitty, right? It's a
shitty to not have that.
Exactly, right? So, but here's the issue, right? Is that people are, there are going to be a big amount of people that are going to accept that, but the advertising experience in that space just isn't that good, right? Or let me rephrase that. It's good for what it is, but it could be better if we want to bring more of the dollars our way. And I think, take a look at what Pandora did. I wrote it in that essay that I referred to, that you'll link to, but it's blanking off the top of my mind. But Pandora did this thing where you could interact with brands while you're listening to music, and that's the way that they were getting their advertising dollars. So I think it's going to be the responsibility of, you know, your class and other classes like you guys, to come up and, again, challenge that idea of what traditional advertising looks like and really push to see something new. Because even I think it's important that you guys fail to learn what works, then continue to do what normally has been done. And I think if enough people challenge the status quo, we're going to get the advertising dollars. I have no doubt, because music is so big, and, you know, Drake sells just as many tickets as, you know, the Golden State Warriors when they had Kevin Durant. So it's going to happen. I think we just need a much, much better experience.
Yeah. I think that is a perfect note. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to just link it down below. But yeah, thank you so much for speaking with us. I actually got a chat that says Clayton is dope.
Oh, shit. I don't know if I can curse on this, but yeah, thank you. I appreciate the comment there. Is this gonna be on YouTube so I can share it?
Yeah.
Right. Sweet. All right, amazing. Well, like I said, thank you so much, guys. Please reach out to me. Email is claydurant@cadmusicmanagement.com. It's in my Instagram bio. It's on my LinkedIn. If you guys are interested, come and check out our new panel that we have in partnership with LinkedIn called Fast Forward. Tomorrow, for any of you music managers out there, we've got a panel called TikTok and Content Marketing Strategies for Quarantine Culture, where we're going to bring in Evan Horowitz, who runs Movers and Shakers, who did one of the most viral branded TikTok campaigns this past year with Elf Cosmetics, and a couple other amazing guests. And we've got a lot of amazing panels set up with some amazing people. So, you know, please subscribe to the newsletter. You know, I'm happy to, you know, connect with any of you one-on-one. And please, if you guys are artists, if you guys are music managers, and you guys need help on your releases, remember, we are doing pro bono free consultation services for any artist or any manager that just needs a little help to get their stuff out there. Because you know, I think we got to just band together to see the other side of all this uncertainty.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You know, as a student, especially being displaced during this whole COVID-19 fiasco, it is really great to see brands like you guys supporting students and independent artists. So I'll be sure to link everything that we've spoken about down in the bio, and all of your upcoming events as well on our socials. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.